Welcome back to one of those videos. This is a video about test-driven iOS development. It's part of a series where I try to build an app that fetches book data from an API. If you haven't seen the previous videos, they are linked here in the video. You can just click and watch the previous videos, and or just start with this one if you're feeling well enough about that. But keep in mind, I'm not explaining everything from the beginning in this video because I have already explained other things I built here in the other videos. Okay, so let's go back to our project and see where we left off last time. So this is the Xcode project, and if you remember, we had this test in the view controller test, so books list view controller test, that checks if the number of items in the collection view is 1 after the view has loaded. And the test failed because the type we get from the view of our system under test, so the view controller, is not of type books list view. So let's fix that. We go to books list view controller and we override load view. Books list view is we init with books list view, just an empty initializer, and then we set the view to this just created books list view. And this is how we set up a view when we don't use a storyboard or a xip. We override load view, and at the end of load view or somewhere in load view, we have to set the view of the view controller to what we want to have. And this creates here a books list view and sets the view of the view controller to yeah. So this sets the view of the view controller to an instance of books list view. Now let's see if the test now passes beyond this. Okay, so now we get a different problem. So the view loading doesn't work because it tells us UI collection view must be initialized with a non-nil layout parameter. Yeah, that is what we expected last time, but we didn't get a failure from the compiler. And the compiler didn't complain last time because this wasn't used by the compiler, because this books list view wasn't used by anything. Now it's used by the view controller. Now the compiler checks it and it sees this doesn't work this way. So we need to provide use a different initializer. We have this initializer that uses the frame and the collection view layout, and now we just use for now a frame of 0 and the simplest layout we can think of, and this is UI collection view flow layout. And let's just make this nicer to read, and I think this should make the compiler happy again. And let's see if we can run this test now. Yeah, the test now runs. We get a books list view, we get the view, the collection view from the books list view, and we ask the data source of the collection view for the number of items in section 0. And we see that the number of items in section 0 is nil, so there's nothing, we get nothing out of it. Or maybe the data source even is nil from the collection view, and therefore this number of items becomes nil. So let's fix that before we move on and try to get something, to get the test pass. To do that, we first of all override view.load. And we provide the collection view with a data source. Let's do something different, because we would have to do some. Let me think what we are going to do now. Sorry about that. No, let's do it correct. So we go back. Okay. So we override view.load. Ooh, view if load. Okay, that's wrong. View.load, super view.load, and we try to get the view as a books list view. And this is that we use the view of the view controller and try to get it as a books list view. This should work, because we just set it up the way that this is a books list view. So this should work. And now we can use the collection view and provide the collection view data source with self. So we set the view controller as the data source of this collection view. And therefore we create an extension of the books list view controller and tell the extension that it will, or tell the class that it will conform to the UI collection, collection view data source. And now the compiler helps us again that we need to provide some methods. And the first one is number of items in section. And here we return 1 for now. And here we return UI collection view cell. I'm not sure if this works, because the collection view usually wants us to reuse cells, but maybe it works if we don't use the cell. I'm not sure about that. Let's check. So now we run this test again, and it works. But this is clearly not what we're trying to do here. So we thought that we are fetching books. We don't. This test doesn't work that way. We don't check if we fetch books. What we check here for now is that the number of items, so loading view should when API returns 1 book, should wait a minute, how to name this. So what I want to have in the name of the test is that the collection view, when the API returns 1 book, that the collection view has 1 item in section 0, should result in 1 item in collection view. So this is a name that essentially tells what's going on. So we load the view, and when the API returns 1 book, then it should result in 1 item in the collection view. This is what's happening here. And this works. So let's run the test again, because we changed the name. The test runner doesn't recognize it anymore. That we have to run it again to get the green check mark working again. So let's now write another test that checks that we actually have the book in the collection view shown. And therefore this is kind of difficult, because we have to figure out how to show. So we also need a collection view cell that has a label, and then we want to see that the label has the name of the book or something like that. So Let's do it like this. Func. No, wait. No, that's okay. So, func test loading view when, or loading view should result in collection view showing loaded book. And this also can throw, or maybe, no, that's true, it can throw. And we just copy what we have here and put it in this test here. So we again load the view and get the books list view and the collection view from it. And now we fetch the cell. We get the cell that is loaded there. So let cell is equal to collection view, data source, cell for item at index path. We again use the collection. Oh boy, the Xcode does not like me. So collection view, and the cell and the index path is 0, 0. So we can, the index path has an initializer that also that takes an array of 2 items. And when you use this initializer, this is the same as index path item 0 section 0. I think this is the correct initializer. So if you use this, this is the same as that. And this is a nice shortcut to use in tests or even in code. I also use it in code. Nice to have. So, and again, we expect that the cell is a specific cell. We expect it to be a book cell. We don't have the book cell yet, but in the test we can just we can just tell our code what we expect or what we like to have, and this is what we are doing here. So we write here try cc unwrap, and we hope to get as book cell. So we try to get a book cell out of that. And the compiler tells us it doesn't know about book cell, so we have to add it. It's a Cocoa Touch class because it's a subclass of UI collection view cell. And we just remove this. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, I'm not good at this today. Sorry. So this is a book cell, collection view cell. We create it here. Before we move on, let's clean it up a bit. We put that in a section, and this is the books list, and this is the, we call that networking for now, networking, and this is called model. I don't know. No, wait, we don't want to. We want to group that into a section. We call it model for now. Maybe we have a better name later on. And the same here, we have this are test doubles. So I just call them test doubles and move them at the end of the list like that. Okay, good. So we now have this test, and it now works because we have a book cell. This is defined here. And we now try to get the name label of the book cell and ask the name label for its text. And we expect that the name of the book cell or the name shown in the cell is dummy book, the name of the book. So we expect, so we ask the cell for a name label and the text in the name label, and we expect that to be dummy, what is it called? Dummy book. So the compiler again tells us we don't have a name label in the book cell. That's why we provide one. So let name label is an instance of UI label, and when we have a property, we also need an initializer init with frame, super init with frame, and we set the name label equal to UI label. So that's all we need for now. No, we also need the required initializer because we don't want to use the we are doing all our layout in code. We don't want to use a storyboard. That's why we need this initializer. And as we did before, we just return nil here. Return nil. And this should be enough to make the test work, I guess. Yes, and now we can run the test. Okay, so this fails now here and XCC unwrap because we try to get the book cell, but you might remember in the books list view controller, we just return a UI collection view cell. Okay, so now let's change that. We want to use a cell that we dequeue from the collection view. Dequeue reusable cell with identifier book cell for index path, and return this. And then when we have that, we also have to register that cell, and we can do that in viewDidLoad. So let's say we use the collection view several times. So let's create a local variable. And I think it's okay to have it as an optional. But if not, we will unwrap it. But for now, it's okay to have an optional, because we can say that the collection view, we can register a cell class, and this is, this is book cell self for the name book cell. We will improve that code later on. Just bear with me. Later on we will make this better, because having here those names in a string is not really a good idea. We will improve that later on. Just stick with me. Okay, so now we can run this test again to see if it now works. It does go further, but it fails because we don't get those dummy book here. We could now provide this cell with the name dummy book, but this would make no sense, because this would just make our future work harder. We already know that we want to use the books we fetched from the API client. So we add here a variable that's called books, and for now we make it private, because I don't expect that we need it anywhere else than in this class, and it will be empty in the beginning. And when we have this books variable, we will fetch the data. So we have the API client, and we get the books, and we need to add here try wait, and we need to add it to the books object or property. And now the compiler will tell us that this doesn't work that way. We need to wrap that in a task, and that's also not enough because this can throw. So we need to catch the error. Catch and the error. For now, we just print it, and we use the logger for that. Import OS log, and we create a logger here. Logger. The subsystem is our free books, and the category is books view controller, books list view controller. This is just for our future self to remind us where we logged that. Later on, we will create an extension for logger to create or to easier log stuff we want to log. For now, we use it like this. And we have, when we have an error, we use the error method from the logger and write the error down into, oh, I think that doesn't work. Yeah, we need to get a string out of that. This should now work, I guess. Yes. Okay. And now we have to think a bit what we are doing right now, because we are fetching the books in a task. We have to do that because it's an asynchronous call in the API client. But if we do that and we test, we just call in the test load view if needed, then view did load is executed, then the test finishes before this is finished because we are switching onto another thread by using the task. This means we have to do something similar here in the test. We have to use a trick, and this is what I meant in the last video by trickery. We, first of all, let's don't use the one here. Let's use the books count, and here we want to use the cell. Oh no, wait a minute. Before we move on, we want to see the tests fail, and this is what we are doing now. So now I run the tests, and now I see they are failing, and they are both failing because we switched in the code to use the books count, and this is 0 because the test reaches this call here before this is executed. Let me show you what I mean. First of all, let's skip the second test for now because we want to focus on one failing test at the time. Xcode provides us with a try xcc skip if, and make it true now, and we also write here focus on some other test, just to remind ourselves why we are skipping this test. Now let's run the tests again to see how a skip test looks like. A skip test gets a gray marker in the gutter and is also marked as skipped. And when you look into our test report, you see that we only have one failing test and one skipped test. One failed, one skipped, and 2 passed. And if we look at all those tests, we have this one is the skip test, the red one is the failing test. And now we can focus on the one failing test and figure out how we can make it pass. In the books list view controller, we use the API to fetch the books. And in the test, we provide the API mock with a book to be returned. So this should work, but it doesn't, because when we add a breakpoint here and we add a breakpoint here where we set up the book or set the returned books to the books variable of this class, and we run the test now, we will see that we are at the assert method before the result from the task arrives. This is the second. So this, we arrive here after the test finishes, and that's why the test fails. Okay, so now let's see how we can fix that. And one easy solution, but not the best one, but one easy solution is to add an expectation. And we call that, or I just call it async. And we use the expectation with the description asynchronous. I hope that's correct. And now we just switch or wait until the, you see, this is switching to a different thread, and this also what we try now to make is we try to switch to the main thread, but to the next run loop of the main thread, and this can be done like this. We add here dispatch queue, go on the main queue and call asynchronous, async fulfill. And now we wait for the expectation. And the maximum timeout, I just use 1 second. What's happening here is the compiler, or no, not the compiler, the test runs, it creates an async expectation, and the expectation is fulfilled in the next run loop. With this code, we switch to the next run loop, to the end of the next run loop. And the test waits at this line 37 until this asynchronous or this async expectation is fulfilled. So it waits here for all those expectations we provide in this array until they are fulfilled. And this is what we are doing here. And now let's see if this fixes our test, if this now works. Still doesn't work. And I'm not sure why. So let's see again what's going on. I try again what's happening when we add those. Oh wait, I don't want to run. I want to run the test. Okay, now it arrives at this book, but still does not work in this. Okay, I'm not sure what's going on here. Let's see what happens if we run this test again. Now we run into this test failure. That's okay, because we are stopping at the breakpoint. So let's now skip over this line. Okay, that's not working right. And if we now see what's going on in the books array, no, sorry, I now need a way to see what's going on here. So let's see if we print the number of books or just the books. And I don't know if we can do that or need like that, and what is it called? String interpolation. Yeah. So let's run this now again and see what's going on. So we print the books here, but we print it after the test has finished. So let's see what happens if we use something like dispatch queue main async after. And we provide something like 0.1 and we execute the code by async fulfill. Let's see what happens then. Now it succeeds. Okay, so the execution of the test was too fast. The wait time wasn't enough. Now we wait for 0.1 seconds, and this is enough to wait until this code is executed. We can remove the print again and see if it still works. Yeah, it works. Okay, good. And now we need to figure out how to... So this is not really nice code, to be honest. So it would be nicer to not wait for a fixed amount of time and all that, but we have to wait for the asynchronous code to be executed. But there has to be a nicer way to do that than to use all those async expectation with an arbitrary number of seconds here. And I will show you how to do that in the next video, I promise. But for now, we use this kind of switching to or waiting for the execution. And what we can do for now is to add an extension to XCTest to make this nicer to read. For now we have this expectation and dispatch queue main after and all that code that's messing with our test code. It's harder to read now. Let's see if we can improve it by using an extension to XCTest. XCTest case. Extension XCTest test case. And we call that wait for async. And we provide it here with seconds. And this is a double. And now we copy that code over here. Copy it and paste it here. And we use the seconds we provide here. Wait seconds. And we also set default value of 0.1. And this should be enough. And now what we can do now is we can remove this code here and just call wait for async, and this should still work. Let's see if it's true. Yeah, this still works. We are now running this code in an extension of XC test case. And this is why we can use it also here. We can remove the skip for now and call wait for async here. And if we run the code now, it will fail because we don't do something in the in cell for item at index path. We don't set up the name label of the cell, and we can do that now here. Cell name label. Oh, we have to cast it first. So as oh no, we need guard let wait as book cell, and if this doesn't work, we return a UI collection view cell, so empty vanilla cell. And if we have a book cell, we can use the name label and set its text to, oh, we need a book first. Right, book is equal to books index path row, and when we have the book, we can use the name of the book. Wait a minute, we don't have a name, we have a title. We can use the title of the book to set to the name label. And if we now run the test again, both tests pass. That's good. That means we are testing in our test that we fetch the information from our API client and then use this information to show in our collection view. So this is a good thing. This is a very good test to have. Before we move on, or before we close this session here, so finish this session and move on in the next session, let's clean up a bit our test case or our test method here, test class. We don't want to have the extension here. We want to use it maybe in other tests as well. So we add a class, Swift file, not a class, an extension, and we call it C test case extension, and we move this extension from here to here, and then we can remove it here. So let's see if it still works. No, it doesn't. That might be the case because we have added to, no, it's in the tests. Ah, okay. We need to import here XC test. And now it should work again. Perfect. That looks good. So we now have, though compiler still is not sure if it knows that there is a wait for async, but we now have two tests that actually test that we are using the API client to fetch books and use the result of the fetch to show in our collection view. These tests prove that. We use a trickery to do that. We use an expectation and wait for 0.1 seconds before we switch to the main thread again, to let the test or to let the code enough time to run the asynchronous code in this task here. In the next session, I will show you how to do it a bit more elegant, I guess, and also we want to avoid a fixed number of seconds because this also depends on the machine where it's running on. It might be when we have a very old computer, it could be that the task needs more time to execute and then this fails even though the code is correct. So we want to have a more robust test in this view controller to make sure that this test only fails when there is a problem and not when there are some strange parameters in our test machine or something like that. And this is what we are going to do next time. And thank you. Wait, let's switch here. Thank you for watching. If you are interested in other videos, YouTube shows other videos now on the screen. You can switch to those and see if there's something interesting for you. Please subscribe and leave a comment. Let me know what you think, and then see you next time. Bye.